so I called his mom one day, and the first time like I talked to her, she was super, super understanding. Well, then I called her again, and she conveniently forgot how to speak English. And I had already talked to her the first time in English.
So thank you for coming to the podcast. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm very excited to get in the world of teaching. Share it to the outsider what it's like.
Yeah, I've been trying to find someone to actually talk about what's happening in the school system right now, and you above all probably know all about it. So I was talking to Carlos. I'm like, hey, do you think she'll be all right? And then he was like, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just start. I'll just start with like the basics. So why are so many teachers quitting these days? Like, what's happening in the school system?
So I think that being in the public school system is like a microcosm of what's going on in the whole society, and our society is like it's a clusterfuck. There's like just so much with like politics, and I feel like parents are against teachers. Like, there's not any real like united front. And I also think that the pandemic and a lot of the exhaustion with the pandemic really changed a lot. And then it's just like teachers are just exhausted.
Oh, damn. And did COVID increase your workload or stuff like that?
It definitely changed the workload. So I was fortunate. I actually, for when we were like quarantined for that first like 7 weeks or so, my district was very lenient. Like, they did not expect us to do a lot. But then the next year we came back and we were doing a hybrid. So I had a group A and a group B, and I saw them like 2 to 3 days a week. So I saw like group A Monday, Tuesday, then group B Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So then when group A was at home, I had to make the curriculum for them to do at home. And then so I had like group A in person, group A online. So I was essentially making 2 curriculums. Okay. And then unfortunately, we would have a lot of kids that then when they would come back in person, they hadn't done any of the work online. So then it became like catch up. That was not particularly like that's not my personal reason why I left, but I know that was a lot of stress for some people. And then we had teachers that went completely online. So then that was a whole other thing for them to learn. And then they had kids that were truant the whole year. Then what happens is like, then they come back to like normal school, and then they're behind. And then whose fault is it? The teacher's fault. So, yeah.
How hard is it to keep students up to date on stuff like this? It's really post-COVID when they're not doing, like you said, it's stuff that you want them to do, like when they're by themselves at their house. And then like they don't do it, and then they still blame you, but you still want your students to do a little bit better. So how hard is it to kind of?
I would say, so if I back up a little bit, so I taught at 3 different schools. So I taught for 13 years. I taught at a charter school, a STEM school, and a public school. At the STEM school where I was at, there was a huge focus on like homework, and it was a lot of project-based learning, and a lot of the kids, it was like a choice school for them to come to. So a lot of the kids would do their homework. Their parents were super invested. We had a lot of parents who were like professors at OSU or who were engineers, and they like wanted to learn. They were very, much invested, knew that they were going to go to college, all that stuff. Then being in a traditional public school, apathy is the best word to describe it. The kids don't give a crap. They don't care. Their parents are not making them do any work at home. It's just like, they just don't care. They really have no interest in what I'm teaching. I was teaching English, so, figurative language, reading, they're not interested in any of that. So even like my first few years in the public school before COVID, homework completion was not happening. We really weren't expecting them to complete their homework. Like, that became like the whole school. Oh, don't expect them to do their homework. And I'm like overachiever teacher here, and I'm like, okay, well, I can't cram all these Common Core standards into my curriculum if the kids aren't doing homework.
Right.
Well, then COVID happens, and there's no expectation for them to do anything outside of school. It's focus on their social emotional learning. You know, a lot of them are going through a lot of trauma right now. Be very, very, very understanding. But at what point, like, do we have to hold them accountable?
Right.
Even last year with, like, when we came back in 2020, when we came back in, we had our hybrid, we had our small classes. Like, kids were allowed to carry their backpacks because they weren't allowed to use their lockers because of the germs and everything. Well, last year when they came back, they were allowed to use their lockers. We had so many kids who just brought their backpacks to school, or brought their backpacks to class, brought their phones to class. Like, they were not held accountable for anything.
So they could just like freely do whatever, but.
And they did. Yep.
And then when they don't achieve to the level they would have if they would have done the homework, they kind of shift the blame on.
Yeah, it
teachers.
like the blame. Like, I was fortunate enough that really my admin were pretty good about, you know, like, I never felt like I was being judged by like test scores. But the kids, I taught 8th grade, so they went into high school regardless of if they failed all their classes. So we're not holding them accountable. There's no summer school. There's no going to be no retention. But I do know some districts. I have a friend who was teaching in a school near Cincinnati, and like her kids, their test scores mattered so much to her. It's like it's part of the teacher evaluation system. So, you know, she has these kids that are already coming in below level. They don't have parent involvement. They're not doing their homework. And then they're taking a state test that are so dry, so long, so boring. They're not doing well on these tests. They're getting, you know, no consequences, but then it's becoming part of her score for her teacher rating.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
That's damn. That's kind of fucked up. So right. Like one of the things that I got a couple of nephews and nieces. One of the things that I like find from them whenever I'm like talking to them is this introduction of this. It's generally far left wing ideologies, whether it's accept everyone for everything or like whatnot, and I feel like COVID kind of pushed this narrative even further than it was. Like you said, it's like, oh, just be more empathetic because they're going through they might be going through a lot of shit. So just like accept everyone for like everything. So from a teacher standpoint, how do you see this play out in your teaching teaching years?
So when I first started teaching, I taught at a school that was probably like a third or 2/3 Muslim, lots and lots of immigrants, very diverse school. So it was just kind of like we accepted diversity because we were all here. We're all diverse. We would have like multicultural day. Like my husband and I, we went to Turkey. Like we got to do all these really cool things. So it was just like we're accepting diversity because we are all here. We're all diverse. Right. It's like melting pot, right? And then it was the same way in the STEM school. Again, like probably like a quarter or, you know, a third Muslim, Black, African American, white. So we had a good amount of diversity. As far as like the gender and like we hear about this like, I don't know, gay agenda or whatever, like right. that was never an issue. Like it was like we accept each other because we're human beings. We all have value because we're human beings. Yeah, I would say like it's definitely the whole like, oh, we're trying to convert all these children to be gay or whatever. Like I read these narratives online, like that's not what's happening. Like I will say like I have noticed in the past few years, especially like since gay marriage became legal, that I did have more students who are out and identifying as part of the LGBT community. And like, I'm going to support them. Like my goal is to make sure my classroom was safe and welcoming. So I'm going to support them. I'm going to, you know, if they have a preferred pronoun, I'm going to use that. But it was never like, you know, we're going to like, it was never something we actually taught. Like, I feel like that's what people think is like, we're teaching this gay agenda. And that was never an issue.
Right. Is there a thing with like, because like one of the thing with me is if my nephew comes to me and be like, hey, I am a man identifying as a woman, or like I want to be called they, then I'm gonna be like, you don't know what you're talking about, because I'm like, you're still too old, so you can't decide a lot of the shit for yourself. You don't know how to cook, so you definitely don't know like what this. So if you don't know what you're talking about, so like how does this play into account in terms of like, because like school we want to teach them the truth, we want to teach them how to think, we want to teach them how to build up a thought process, and then when these like narratives comes from like whether it's from parents or like parents, society, whatever, like when they come along and be like, oh, this my son, I want you to call them a day, then like does it bother you at all, or you know?
No, it never bothered me. And like, I look at it kind of as like middle school teaching in 8th grade. Like these kids, they're going through so much. Like they're really trying to find their identity. And like, I think back to like what I was like in high school, and like, you know, I was going through like emo phase, and, you know, we're painting my nails black and all that stuff, and like trying to figure out who I was. And if like, I have a student who's a female and she wants to be referred to as male, like I'm going to do it because like, I want her to know that I'm going to support her or him or they, or I had several kids that, you know, this is my birth name, but I want to go by this. Okay, fine. Like it's right. At the end of the day, it's not going to really change anything. I mean, I think that's like the parent, you know, if the parent is not okay with that, then that's the parent. I'm going to, you know, respect my students' wishes, but I'm not going to go much further than that.
You're right. So, like one other thing with me is like, if anyone wants me to call them whatever, I personally don't care about them. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna call them whatever they want to call it, because they wanna feel respected, or like they want to think that they will be respected if I actually go by whatever they want to, like if they want to use he, she. Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with any like calling anything, but the only problem for me, I would say, is if and I personally don't have any problem with like lesbian, bisexual, gay people at all, because like this is actually proven science. They actually have like valid data to actually support this and stuff like that. But I don't know what to say when it goes like further than that about like you are what you feel like, but then it don't account for the biological side of things. Then not like now, I don't know whether I would actually support my kids if my son comes up and like, hey, I'm a C. I'm like, are you? Mm-hmm. So this is where I have like problem. You want to pull up that video? There's this YouTube video that I find out today. It was kind of insane. I'm not saying all the schools are actually like this, and I might have just stumbled up on this one, but.
I teach my elementary school students about gender identity. Learning about gender identity helps children develop critical social-emotional skills such as self-awareness, social awareness, and respect. I teach my students that there's a whole spectrum of gender identities and that everyone, whatever their gender, deserves love and respect. Some people are girls, some are boys, some are both, some are neither. Gender is all about how we feel on the inside and how we express ourselves. The most important thing I teach my students is that it's our job to listen to and learn from people when they share with us who they are, and that we need to use the name and the pronouns that people ask us to use when we refer to them. Here are some of the books and tools that I found the most useful when teaching about gender identity.
So one other thing that I wanted to, let me get your reaction on this one.
I think she's doing that for the views, to be honest. I don't know any teachers. And again, was teaching 8th grade, and she seems like she's teaching elementary school. I don't know any teachers that ever went that far.
Right. So one other thing that I wanted to ask you is like, do you think it's appropriate for any teachers, if they're doing it, to teach sex education? Because I think like gender education is partly sex education, because now you gotta talk about genitalia, you gotta talk about like what all those things are, and like what being a gay couple is, what being a lesbian couple is, and what being a straight couple is, and all stuff like that. Do you think it's appropriate for teachers to, if they're doing it, to teach any kind of sex education?
I don't think that it really has a place in like a content area class. Like, I will say that students in middle school they're taking health class.
Right.
And I know that those things are covered in health class. And I do know that there are actually, like, when you're in health class, like, the parents get all this information at the beginning and know, like, if you don't want your kid to have any of these lessons, to opt out. But again, in, like, regular, like, classes, like, that's not, I don't think that it really fits in with our content. I definitely can appreciate, like, diversity. Like, when I taught literature, like we would always read, like we read Langston Hughes, we read Amy Tan, like we read stories from different cultural perspectives. I don't think that this gender spectrum necessarily is appropriate. No. At least, yeah, like I would definitely say that it's, like I said before, like it's definitely blown out of proportion on the news. Like teachers are not really doing this.
Right.
We're not.
Yeah, I don't think everyone's doing it at all.
But like now I will say, like I had like a like be an ally sign. I had a I had a pin that was LGBT, like a pride flag. Like I want my students to know that it's a safe space, but I'm not really pushing it. Like if they want to come to me and tell me things, and I would be there to listen. But yeah,
there's this it's actually a funny story. So I think kids these days are actually maturing or like at least acting like they're actually mature enough way too quickly than how things were when I was young. Like there's this and this is back in Nepal. There's this book and then they would talk sex education when I was in, I think like 9th grade or like 10th grade back home, and that's like by then we're like 14, 15. So there's this book with like all these pictures, and then like we were all like excited that we're gonna get to see it, and then stuff like that, and then like now you come here, like my nephews and then like nieces, they are well aware of all of this stuff.
Yeah. How old are they?
Yeah, like my eldest nephew he's 13 now, but he knows. They all know. So I feel like in school these days, even if they're not taught, like things like that is a common thing for them to talk about and stuff like that.
And that's weird to me too, because I went to a Catholic school and like I did not know any of that stuff. But then I also feel like a lot of it has to do with social media,
right.
And what they're seeing on social media. And I think that social media is leading to a lot of the problems. And like I don't know if you know about the TikTok trends.
Yeah.
And like last year, how like at the school I was at, like the bathrooms were vandalized. The kids would take the soap dispensers off the wall. Like it's ridiculous. Like they're getting their information from social media and not their parents.
Like one of the thing that's like kind of crazy about TikTok is if you look at China or like some of the Asian countries, they actually have this like the government intervention where like when it comes to TikTok, and then TikTok cannot like after every couple of videos they have to show creative TikTok. For instance, like if they see like couple of like entertaining TikToks, now TikTok will have to automatically show somebody doing something awesome, or like somebody creating something, somebody reciting a poem, or like somebody telling a good story, or like something, so that creative side is like enforced in them, just like this entertaining side is. But I think in this country, unfortunately, it's just a freely given, and it's not enforced. And I'm not saying that there should be like enforced media, but like when it comes to kids, if we know that if we know for sure that there are actually age appropriate things that they should be learning, then to just let it be free is like just like opening up the alcohol cabinet and like
exactly, yeah.
Try not to drink.
And it is always baffling because like the things that these kids would, and we would have, like, me and my colleagues, like we would find some of their TikToks and we would just, watch them. Right. Like we had one kid that was taking TikToks on, in the bathroom and on the school bus. And so we would sit there and watch them like, what the fuck is wrong with these kids? Where the hell are their parents? Like parents want to blame teachers for all the things that we do and how, we're pushing like this liberal agenda, whatever. Where the fuck are they when their kids are watching this stuff on TikTok? I had one student last year who was like using all these like racial slurs, the N-word, blah, 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 blah. Like his mom never took his phone away afterwards. He was like suspended for 12 days, almost faced expulsion. And then he comes back with a phone, and like his TikTok never got deleted. But then interestingly enough, his mom would email me and be like, you didn't put his grades in fast enough. It's just baffling. It's like your kid is like, yeah, like. Do
they get held accountable for stuff like that or no?
Do they what?
Like if you saw stuff like that online on like making those videos on TikTok, do they get held accountable for stuff like that?
So that particular student who was using all these racial slurs and like that stuff, he got 12 days OSS, out of school suspension. But then like I know that there are certain kids because, okay, if I'm being completely honest, like my last year of teaching, it was me just trying to make it through the year. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that there are kids that were making TikToks in my classroom. But no, most of the time they don't. Like, and then it's like a certain part, like the district's like, well, my hands are tied, it's freedom of speech. So unless you're like making like a threat against a particular group of people, no.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. And their parents, the kids need their phones to get a hold of me. I had one kid who got out in the middle of my class to go take a phone call. And she walked back in and I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh, damn. How old is she?
How old are they?
Yeah, like how old is
14.
she? 14.
Yeah.
And then she had to take a call in the middle of the class.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid as hell.
Yeah. And like, I can't, like, the things that I wish I could say to some of these kids' faces, of course I couldn't because I would have lost my job. But it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like,
yeah, that's so stupid. Yeah, back home, like if we don't do our homework, or like if anyone see us doing anything that we should not be doing as a kid, whether it's doing something dangerous or jumping from somewhere or like anything like that, anyone can slap us anywhere. And it was like there was this constant threat that like we don't want to do anything stupid because somebody might see us. Mm-hmm. Or like even if like teachers see us outside of school, mm-hmm. like we'll get slapped by them, and then like when we come home, like, oh yeah, so we actually got smacked once, like we actually got smacked one more time. So there is this like hardcore thing when it comes to like disciplining the students to actually make sure they don't do anything stupid. Yeah, I mean, it did push. I would say it did push like a couple of kids to be even more extreme because they were like trying to be like trying to do reactionary things like, oh, you're gonna punch me, let me do this, and then like kind of like trying the parents out and then like trying the other trying other people out. But I would say majority of the people, like nobody died, nobody broke their bones and stuff like that by doing like something stupid, or everyone had and also I think like we actually grew up a lot slower than how kids are growing these days. Mm-hmm. Like how does a discipline like when it comes to disciplining kids, how does it look in here? Like how if you want to discipline someone, right? How do you discipline? Like back home they would actually smack us.
Well, I will say that I did read something online that I think it's in maybe Mississippi. Don't quote me on this. Carlos, do some fact checking. There's one state that is bringing back paddling, but for the most part, like, no, like, and I feel like I'm torn. I can understand some of the philosophy against like not punishing kids, but then when I look back at how I was raised, I understand it. So like kids really, one of the goals, is it Mississippi? Missouri. Okay, so Missouri teachers can paddle apparently. What did I say? Okay, I forgot what I was saying. I'll start over. So like a lot of, especially since COVID happened, like teachers are told, you have to, a lot of these kids are going through a lot of trauma. They're at home and they don't have parents that are there or parents that are checking in on their kids. So we had to give them a lot of grace. And I can understand that to a degree. But even like when they're getting punished, like it's like lunch detention or really like lunch detention would be the big one, or we call it a working lunch. It wasn't even a detention. It was like you had time to go do your missing work. After school detentions to me were very strange because when I first did my student teaching, which was in 2008, I think, I sat in, this was in Northern Ohio, this was in a rural community, I sat in on an after-school detention, and it was a room full of kids. They just sat and they stared, and they were in there for an hour, and if they missed detention, they got another detention. Now detention is the kids come to detention after school, and they're allowed to do their work on a Chromebook, which technically means they get to do whatever they want on their Chromebook.
Yeah, because they will have access to the internet.
Yep. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you need to be sitting and staring at the wall. And the admin were like, you can help the kids with their homework during detention if you want, but teachers are taking the job as the detention monitor, as a time to sit and just, get work done. They're not there to interact with the kid and do their science work for them.
Right.
Most schools don't want out of school suspension for a few reasons. One reason is it seems that it does seem to affect like Black males more, and like they look at it and they say that these like it seems like Black males are getting punished more. The other thing with out of school suspension is they don't want the kids to be out of the classroom because they're missing more content. Now I will say thinking about, and I've been trying to figure out like, when did it all change? Thinking about when I first started teaching. So I was at this charter school, and again, it was a lot of immigrant families, and teachers would actually go have home visits. Like we would be invited into their homes and they would feed us these elaborate meals. And like, we really got to know the families, and the parents were so supportive of the teachers. And I feel like then there wasn't as much discipline issues. It's just like, I don't know, it's so much like if you try to give a kid a harsher punishment, so much of it is like, you need to tell me the story again. Like, I don't think my kid really did that. Like, how can I figure out ways to get this, not to have my kid responsible, but how can I figure out ways to say that the teacher did something wrong? It's just definitely a battle between parents and teachers.
So like parents are going like out of their way to make sure their kids don't get punished and stuff like that.
They're like desperately try to figure out ways to say that that kid didn't do it.
But that's not helping the kid. Like that's not helping the kid at all.
Nope. And like I remember we had kids that definitely deserved an after school detention, but if their parents couldn't pick them up, then they would be like, oh well, we're just gonna give them like 3 lunch detentions instead. And all the teachers would be like, the parent needs to be be inconvenienced. No, like you're accommodating the parents way too much. Like it's ridiculous. So frustrating.
So do you see the same kind of trend with like immigrant families also, or no?
I didn't. Now the school that I was at for the last 4 years barely had any. It was 99% white Christian families. It seemed like, and I definitely feel like the immigrant families, and again, this is somewhat of a generalization, and this is my experience. I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like they were definitely like I remember one parent was like, he told, this is a long time ago, like I don't know, this kid was like in 1st or 2nd grade. He was an African kid from probably Ghana, if I remember correctly. But like I said, oh, Kelvin didn't have a very good day today. And his dad's like, you shut up. You listen to your teacher. Like, it was like he had my back no matter what. Like it was crazy. And like, I definitely don't see that with American families. It's really, really sad.
Yeah, right. Like if any of our nephews or like nieces, they come up saying that we got in problem, like we got in trouble from our teacher or anything like that, they're in even bigger trouble at their house.
Mm-hmm.
They will all right, let's go through everything, and then like we're like trying to. I don't think anyone or at least the families that I know that are from abroad, I don't think anyone will have any problem with saying like trying to cover their ass, or like trying to say that they didn't do it, or like it's on teacher or anything like that. Yeah, that's kind of wild.
And I had one of my students back several years ago, so she's probably in her early 20s now, but she had just immigrated from Egypt, and like she told me stories how like you did not mess around in your classes because you would get like smacked with a ruler. And like just thinking like other kids, like I had kids that were refugees, and like their work ethic was so amazing because they knew like how fortunate they were to have school. And today's kids in America, it's really like, it's reflective of everything else that's going on in our society. And it's just really depressing.
Yeah. One of the things that I do want to ask is like, cause like large portion of my audience are most likely going to be immigrants. So one of the things that I do want to ask is like, how do you see immigrant kids doing? And then like, what do you see them struggling with, especially in the school system? Do you see them struggling with like anything in part, or like, what are they not understanding?
I think some of it is just like cultural understanding. When I did teach with a lot of refugee students, like it was understanding even things like balanced like what's a balanced diet look like in America? Like I remember that there was one family and the kids kept getting sick because all they were eating were Cheetos.
Oh, damn.
Like understanding like cultural like idioms or experiences. One year I gave back many years ago when I taught like ESL, I like gave them like the first Thanksgiving, and like we talked about like what kind of foods are in Thanksgiving, and they didn't quite understand like why we have that. I do think that some immigrants who are not literate in their native language, like we noticed a big gap. Particularly like, you know, if you're not like, and it goes hand in hand. I think it's the same thing with American kids. If they're not like, if their parents are not very well educated, their parents are probably not going to be reading to them at home. They come in with, you know, not having so much of an understanding of like phonics and the alphabet and things like that. And then if you're an immigrant and you don't have a good grasp of reading and literature or literature, writing, reading, whatever in your first language, then it's going to be even harder.
Oh, damn. Yes. Yeah, I think as you can see, as you can probably still see right now, language is one of the things that we definitely struggle with because like that's not our first language and we're still trying to figure it out. But I don't think the school system is that hard. Like I actually took math. I think I took like algebra 1 and geometry the first year that like when I moved here, and then I started from sophomore year. And the math that they taught on here, I think I learned it on my 4th grade. So there was this there's still a big gap when it comes to math and science.
Yes, that's very true.
And then it does accelerate pretty quickly from like sophomore towards like by the time you actually start going to college, it almost picks it all up. But I feel like there's this like big push on the final year of your school curriculum that you got to cram everything. And if you want to learn more, now you can also take this like advanced classes that will actually count towards your college grade and stuff like that. Like why is there? I guess what I'm trying to ask, like, why is there not like big push when it comes to STEM study, like science, technology?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's something else that I was thinking. Like one of the reasons that we're having so many problems in public schools is like the way that a traditional public school is set up is so antiquated. It comes back to like before, you know, like even the Industrial Revolution. So much of it is, you know, we're going to teach to this test. This test is going to be a multiple choice test. We're not looking at like teaching STEM, teaching 21st century skills really. I think it's just like it's going to be too hard to overhaul all of that. It's money. Yeah, it's fair. And like, I will say like some of the things that kids are learning like on TikTok, they're learning how to use technology, but they're learning on their own. They're not necessarily learning like boundaries or limits. They're not getting to do like, you know, robotics or, you know, more advanced sciences, things like that. I think it just comes down to this money issue for a lot of districts and this idea that they don't want to revamp something. And then I don't know if you're familiar with Common Core. Okay. So to give a little bit of background, in 2000 or 2001, it was when George W. Bush was president. He decided that we needed to keep up with other countries. So he came up with this program called No Child Left Behind. And that's why every state has to test. So the state test that kids take at the end of the year, that's to show that no child is getting left behind. Well, spoiler alert, it's failing terribly. That's like, 20 years ago? They need to get rid of it. But as part of that, they came up with these Common Core state standards, which are in math and ELA in English, and every state's supposed to be following these Common Core standards. Well, the Common Core standards are ridiculously complex. At some point, they kind of tried to revamp the way that math was being taught. I don't know too much about that because I never taught math. But like teachers are supposed to be getting their kids to these Common Core standards and kind of neglecting other things. Now, when I was teaching at a STEM school, it was really cool because we didn't really have to do that. Like we were this different entity. And so kids would get to do internships. They would get to do these early college experiences. Like, you know, they're doing anatomy in high school. They're taking OSU classes. But again, that's not the normal. That's like the choice school. So I don't know. It's just, I think, yeah, it's very antiquated. It needs to be revamped, but it's not going to happen because it costs too much money.
Right, and then like no one wants to fund the school.
Of course, yeah. And like the sad part is, the richer schools, like schools in affluent suburbs, their kids are getting such better educations. And it's not like the teachers aren't trying. The teachers are amazing, doing whatever they can, but they just have more resources.
Or I often see like at least teachers around here, like I often see them spending out of their pocket to actually buy like school supplies and
100%.
and stuff like that. So it's like they're already not getting paid right. And on top of that, now they also have to buy stuff from their own pocket so that they can supply to the students. And on top of that, after you do all of that, now their parents are not respectfully about the fact that you actually spend your own money and all this stuff, and they're still trying to shift the blame on the teachers and stuff like that.
Yep.
It's kind of sad.
It's very sad. And even like the government, like it used to be like you could claim, I think it was $500 as an educator expense on your taxes. And then they cut that down to $250.
Yeah. You're definitely spending more than $5 right there.
Gosh, yes. Yeah, teachers spend a lot of money. Because that's like why everybody goes into teaching. It's not for the money, that's for sure. It's for, we want every kid to learn. We need to provide them with what they need.
Right.
But, yeah. And then the schools like the STEM school that I was at, or the charter school, like, they're providing some different opportunities for the kids, but then the teachers are getting paid so badly. And then you see a lot of teacher turnover, which is not good for kids. Like if your teacher's leaving in the middle of the year.
Right. So after teaching for like 13 years, what pushed you over the boundary and saying like, you know what, fuck this, I'm definitely done?
A few things. I think burnout was definitely, I was like making myself physically sick. Just like, I hated getting to work every day. Like I was physically sick. I was having a lot of panic attacks and a lot of anxiety that was like, I've always had panic attacks, but they were never like related to work. They're related to other things. A few things. So one thing that really started bothering me as I'm getting older is the fact that I knew that I was working harder than 90% of my students. The apathy like just drove me insane because I was the kid that, got nothing less than a B, in college, summa cum laude, distinguished graduate. Like I love learning. I always worked so hard. And like when I'm spending time coming up with these great ideas, like, looking and seeing how can I engage my kids, and they're like they're not meeting me halfway. Like it was just like, I'm worth more than this.
Right.
And then it was other things like not feeling like I was heard, or treated as a professional. There were a few things like last year, I had one parent email me and tell me that I was indoctrinating his child by trying to teach about diverse perspectives. So not teaching from a predominantly white, cisgender, Christian, viewpoint was bothering him. So he told me I was indoctrinating his child. But then he didn't care that his kid failed and like barely did anything the rest of the year. But he just didn't want me to, be, again, like this liberal propaganda. So the fact that he thought he could talk to me that way.
Yeah, that's messed up.
Yeah. And like I got to this point and like I would look at these kids and I would be like, I have this like huge bag of tricks in terms of classroom management. Like I've done a lot and they don't give a shit. And I'm like, no, I'm worth more than this.
Right.
So yeah. And like my admin, they were pretty good. But again, like I didn't feel like I was heard. Like if I would bring up an issue, I would maybe get ignored. Or if it was something like we would have a kid that was continually getting in trouble, it would be like, they had a lot of trauma. And like, it would almost be like there's like this expression like floats around memes online that it's like, set my worst kid out, sent my kid to the office and they came back with a lollipop and a puppy. Like, that's pretty much what it was. I was like, I need this kid away from me. They come back 15 minutes later. It's like, I'm worth more than this. I can't do it.
So I mean, like, so there is no administrative support per se when it comes to discipline these kids too.
And then there's another expression that I think rings very true. It's like the teacher's afraid of the principal's afraid of the superintendent. The superintendent's afraid of the parents are afraid of the kids are afraid of nobody.
So everyone's shifting the blame, and then like at the end of like everything, kids will
do whatever the heck they want. Yep.
Damn.
And I was in a good school district. Like I was in a suburban school district that seemed to have a lot of like community support. But like I'm looking at these kids and I was like, this is too much for me.
Yeah, I think like one of the things that social media did at least lately is I think some of the parents, they lose focus of what they should be doing with their kids, and they wanna, whether in the name of inclusivity, whether in the name of diversity, whether in the name of whatever it is, they wanna make videos about something else. They wanna talk about something else rather than teaching them what they need to learn. It's like it's no one said they can't be gay, no one said they can't be lesbian, but I think when you're 5, learn math, science, English, like
learn to read. Yes.
Yeah, learn to read so that later on, learn to think so that later on down the road, if you think that is what you want to be, I mean, you're free to do. I mean, you're in a free country, so you could do it later on down the road. There's this end of the video that I saw, and this is like I started seeing this video, and then I'll actually watch it, and then like these videos, like it keeps coming up.
White people that aren't like serial killers like Ted Bundy.
Does your mom say you have to be LGBT? No, I can choose what I want to be, but
Go ahead, Lex. Go ahead. Keep talking. Say what you're saying.
My mom doesn't matter if I am gay or lesbian or any of that. She doesn't care. All she cares about is that I'm a part of it. And if I'm not a part of it, she'll try to convince me to join it.
What? Are you saying right now?
Facts.
That I would convince you to join what?
The LGBTQIA plus community.
Yeah, so I've been seeing so many of these videos lately. Oh my God. Yeah, I feel like this is what I think is wrong with like the Western countries lately. Is this like losing focus of what should be taught, and like no one said you can't be part of whatever community, but it's like it's at least not the time to talk about it with your kids.
And and I feel like parents that do that, it's like I had a student who their parent was very much like, you have to use these particular pronouns. But so much of this parent was like wanted to be their child's friend and like was afraid to discipline the child.
Right.
It's like, no, you're the parent. Like and I'm not a parent, but like.
Yeah, I think like I think the whole thing is that for like whatever reason, whatever trouble they're actually going through, this like finding a place to put everything and like point fingers at like, oh, this is why. So like for instance, like my kid is not doing so well because he's not widely accepted, and this is why it's happening. Like he don't know how to read, not because he's not learning how to read, and then not because I'm not teaching him how to read, but it's because he's been attacked all the time about his identity and stuff like that. And then this like finding a punching bag so that you can keep punching things.
It's some way to like shift the blame from like, your kid is misbehaving. Well, this happened to her, blah, 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 blah. Like I had one of those too. Like this girl was bullying people like crazy. Like she like started a fight with a student, like unprovoked. And her mom was like, no, they're bullying her. It's like, no, it's not. That's not what's happening. But again, like nobody trusts teachers. So we're just, full of shit because like it's so frustrating because like I have a master's degree. I'm a professional, but I'm not treated like one. And that was again, like the bottom line of me like leaving. It's like, I'm worth more than this.
Right.
Like there would be times that I would get parent emails, and like Carlos can attest to this. Like they would bother me like the whole weekend. Like I would have to take my email off my phone. Or like I would be worried that I was going to get like in trouble from my admin. Like,
what's the craziest complaint that you?
Oh gosh.
Got about, like the one that like stands out.
Oh. Okay, I remember it one. Yes, I remember this one. Okay, so my family is all Hispanic. Okay, I married into a Hispanic family, so I consider myself like, I don't know, Hispanic by proxy. All my nieces and nephews, everybody's Hispanic. I had a Hispanic student once. Got to school tardy like every single day. Do you know the story? He knows the story. Okay. And I really wanted to try to like build a connection with him, like be like, oh, like, I understand, a lot about your culture. I feel like I've lived it for 20 years. He's tardy every day and he would like sleep during class. And so I called his mom one day, and the first time like I talked to her, she was super, super understanding. Well, then I called her again, and she conveniently forgot how to speak English. And I had already talked to her the first time in English. And like she pretty much like said like I bullied her son, and that's why he didn't come to school, because he was afraid of me.
Yeah.
And she forgot English like halfway through the phone call. And
Oh, damn.
And yeah. And I was like, dude, I would have been your kid's biggest fan.
Right.
And she did that to me. Then there was another girl who I'm teaching social study, or I keep saying so. I used to teach social studies. I'm teaching English, and one of the things we're doing is like doing like presentations, and she's refusing to give a presentation. So then she tells me like her mom is gonna come and like kick my ass, and that I'm forcing her to do a presentation, but she has panic attacks, and I'm like, honey, look at me. I'm like the queen of anxiety. No, this is not how it's going to work. You need to, practice and get over your panic attacks. And then she like stood in the corner of my room, like no lie, like the girl from like The Ring, like stood in the corner of my room and stared at me and would not move and would not leave. So I had to call like the principal, and I'm like, you need to remove her from my room. It was awful. Yeah. And their parent, like, and these kids, like, yeah, these particular students would be seniors right now, and I'm probably like 50-50 chance they're not. Just because, if their parents are like letting them get away with that stuff in 8th grade, I know like it's harder from there.
That's wild. That's some wild stories.
Yeah.
That's stupid. Yeah. One of the things that I that I do want to talk to you about, and this is actually unheard of for, I would say, almost all immigrants, because this is not practiced back home and in any of the countries that I know, or like at least like outside of here, is the what is this thing? Participation trophies, where like kids are just handed out things just because. So I get the concept about like I'm passing out participation trophies, or I understand that the whole point of the game is to play the game, but I think that takes the competitive aspect of things out. And how do you see this play out in the school system?
It goes hand in hand with the fact that parents don't want their kids to be held accountable for things or held responsible for things. I mean, like, real life isn't that friendly. Like, yeah, like, I think participation trophies, it's a ridiculous concept. I think it coddles kids. They need to learn how to deal with, like, losing gracefully.
Right.
They need to learn good sportsmanship. Yeah, because it's not like if I, have a job interview and I'm not going to get, a participation trophy for, just showing up. Like, no, I have to deal with that and be like, okay, well, I have to try again. Like, yeah, again, it's just like our whole society. It's like,
yeah, I think that takes the competitive aspect of I mean, like once you graduate, and then like you said, once you face the real world, like no one's gonna hand you things just because you're pretty. No one's gonna hand you things just because your mom's want it. Like your mom's gonna complain about it. Like I could get fired tomorrow if I don't do if I don't do the right thing, and my mom can't do anything about it. And like I think like introduction of participation trophy, and like I do see the point of like why they did it. I'm like I understand that the whole point of the game is so that you play the game, and then like you want to have fun while you're playing game and not think about winning all the time, and not play the game so that you can win, but rather play the game so that you can play the game. But I don't think kids, or like at least they're like under the age of 18 or something. I don't think they know that. To like just I'm just playing the game to play the game. I think the rust that you get from like winning, or like that like sad like being sad when you lose. I think it actually teaches us a lot about life, and like, oh yeah, I mean, like if I win, this is how I'm gonna feel. So I'm gonna do this and this so that I win in life, or like in this game, or like whatnot. And then like it goes the same thing about like losing. But I think this is just like letting everybody win all the time. I don't think it helps the kids at all.
No, and like there's going to be kids that are better at certain things. Like,
Right.
every kid's going to have a strength somewhere. But they need to learn. It's okay to lose sometimes. Like, there's an expression in teaching that's like building a growth mindset. Like, you need those losses. You need to understand that failure is a part of, life, and that, mistakes are proof you're trying, things like that. But then I can imagine, like, if I'm like hanging up work in the classroom and a certain kid's work's not up, then their parent's going to be like, you're bullying my child. Like, that will legitimately happen. It's like, maybe your kid didn't do a good job. What do you want me to do? Like, I'm not, yeah.
You didn't do a good job, but like, there you go. He came on the top. Like, that's stupid.
Here's a gold star.
right, that's some stupid stuff. Yeah. I heard you also have a YouTube channel. I haven't been able to check out anything, but that's what I heard.
Yes. So
what is it called?
So my channel and my whole brand is called Amanda of All Trades. So I decided that when I left the classroom, I was going to essentially like start a business. Okay. So I have my master's in instructional design. So I am still a design and curriculum, which is on Teachers Pay Teachers, which is a marketplace for teachers to get products. Okay. Because most schools don't have textbooks anymore, which is good because, it does show that we're kind of evolving in terms of like, not everybody having the same, worksheets. It gives you a lot of creativity by, buying things that teachers made. So anyway, I have my store, Amanda of All Trades, on Teachers Pay Teachers. And then I have my channel, Amanda of All Trades, on YouTube, where I am like vlogging about what the heck I'm learning now that I quit teaching. So there are a lot of other teachers, because I did a video about how burned out I felt at the end of my, last year. And I had so many people reach out for, saying, I'm in South Africa and I feel the same way. I'm in Australia and I feel the same way. So this whole teacher exodus is real. Like, teachers are tired.
Yeah, I've been seeing lots and lots of like, I'm sure not everyone's coming out in social media and actually letting the whole world know that they're quitting because of this or that. But just the amount that are actually coming out and like talking about it, it's actually insane. Like, I think teachers were already understaffed pre-COVID to actually begin with, but I think like COVID and then this like extra burden of figuring out online versus live, and then like figuring out how you're gonna grade it, and then like you said, just being empathetic about not completing the homework too, and just being like, oh, it's okay, they're actually going through a lot and stuff like that. Not saying they're not, but I think kids, to be honest, are not going through that much. I think it's their parents that are actually going through things, and kids, they just gotta be a kid, and they just gotta learn and stuff like that.
And kids are super resilient. Like, they will bounce back.
Right.
But I know in Florida, if you're a veteran, you can teach now without any teaching degrees. And in Arizona, they're letting college students teach. So
it might come to that here too.
I know that Ohio usually had like a surplus of teachers, because we actually have a lot of universities that have teaching programs. But yeah, like, I have 2 nieces that I'm trying to convince to not go into teaching. They're in college right now. But I mean, they're going to have to learn on their own. But
right. Yeah. That's some wild shit. Yeah. Well, anyways, thanks for coming to this. So I really appreciate you giving us the time, and it was fun.
Thank you for inviting me. It was fun.
All right. Thank you.